You're either a venture capital fund that has one of these power law companies in it, or you're not. If you're not, you're worth nothing. The top quartile of venture funds returned 2.4x over the last 10 years. You could have bought the NASDAQ and made 8x over that same period of time. And that's the top quartile of venture funds.
One, two, three.
Coming up, we are airing my live fireside chat with David Friedberg at World Agri-Tech from last year. The Modern Acre is presented by AgList, the only independent platform for farmers, agronomists, and researchers to find, discover, and review biological products. If you're looking for the best biological products out there, you're looking to hear from other growers, they're experiencing using biologicals, check out aglist.com to learn more. All right, guys, we are super excited to once again partner with World Agri-Tech. World Agri-Tech is coming up in March in San Francisco. It's March 17th and 18th, and this is really the premier ag tech event of the year. Leaders, executives, C-suite from ag tech companies across the industry meet in San Francisco. It's always a great event. Tim and I have been the past few years, and last year I got the opportunity to moderate a fireside chat with the David Friedberg of Ohalo and the All In podcast and chat about ag tech and investing and the advancements in genetics and AI. And it was a really fun, short conversation. And we got the opportunity to release it to you guys today to hear a little sneak peek into the World Agri-Tech Summit. And we also, in partnering with them, have an exclusive discount code for you guys. So if you use the code ACRE10, that's ACRE 10, you'll get 10% off your ticket. So that's actually, I think, a $200 savings on your ticket. So be sure to use ACRE10 at checkout, and we'd love to see you there. It's great networking. It's really, really best of the year in terms of all the movers and shakers in ag tech in one place. So be sure to check it out. Get the early bird pricing. The link is in the show notes. Again, use ACRE10 at checkout for 10%. And excited to share this conversation. This was a lot of fun moderating this with David, who's been on the podcast before. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's jump in. All right. Well, good to see you all. Welcome to the shortest fireside chat in history. We're going to try to cover a lot in 15 minutes. How's it going, Dave?
It's going. Good to see everyone.
All right. So I think we should start with a good old-fashioned science corner. There's been a lot of advancements in genetics and breeding. Can you kind of give us an overview of what's happening right now in the space and the advancements happening?
I think the way to kind of think about plant breeding is it started with just the phenotype and a field evaluation. So breeders would make a cross between parents. They would put a whole bunch of seed in the ground, and then they would observe the physical characteristics or the phenotypes of the plants and make a selection. And they had no idea what the genotype or what the genome or what the alleles were of that particular plant. And over time, we kind of started getting DNA sequencing data, and that allowed this kind of cursory marker-assisted breeding model, which kind of unlocked a lot of advancements in agriculture, where using genetic markers, breeders were able to identify phenotypes, make selections using the genotype, using the sequencing data, and advance them. And we've had this proliferation of data because of the low cost and declining cost of sequencing, plus a lot of phenotyping data or field evaluation. So as farm equipment collects data, as more data is generated from imaging, it turns out that we could use all of that to make selections in a smarter way by identifying the relationship between the genome and the physical characteristics of the plant. And that was historically done, again, using this kind of cursory kind of marker model where you find specific markers. What's happened lately using the new sophistication of what people call AI, but it's, there's a lot of ways to kind of characterize that, is we can identify combinations of genes or the AI can identify an index. How likely is something? So pick a phenotype that's really hard to characterize as being on or off, like yield. Yield isn't on or off. You can pick a color of a plant and say it's at red or white. That's a really easy phenotype, but yield is a really challenging one. There's no gene for yield. So what the AI can now do is it can take the entire genome and it can predict the yield based on that genome. Or it can predict some other complicated phenotype of the plant based on the genome. Because it's taking all of the data, all of the phenotypic data that's being collected, all of the genomic data, and it's identifying on its own an algorithm or a model that makes a prediction. And that's a huge unlock in agriculture. Because now, in the future, or very near term, rather than just kind of make a prediction, we can actually start to make selections or use gene editing or other advanced breeding techniques to drive a specific outcome we want in the genome. So I can go in, make a specific knockout of a gene, make a transformation, or combine a set of genes that would drive the phenotype I want. So that's a big unlock. And I think we're getting to a point where we have a lot of companies working on what we would call genome language models. So they will take the phenotype, you could say, I want a plant that grows in the Sahara Desert and will make, oranges. And the software can resolve to the exact construct of the genome that it thinks might make that plant. That's where we're headed in the next kind of couple decades. And then we have the tools now to actually create that genome, turn it into a plant, and put it in the field. So we're seeing this kind of merger between synthetic biology and traditional plant breeding enabled by AI that I think is going to be a big transformation over the decades ahead. And we're getting very close. Just the other day, the Arc Institute released Evo2, which is effectively a genome language model. And you can think about Evo2 as a spell checker or a grammar checker of genomes. You can put a genome into it, it will identify the genes, and it will identify problems with certain genes. It's like, wait, that particular sequence is going to cause some pathogenic variant. And it doesn't know that it's the BRCA gene. It doesn't know that it's a particular gene for a plant that's going to cause some sort of failure in growth. And so it's really interesting how it's been able to take all of the genome data that exists in the world today and really understand or predict whether or not a specific sequence in a genome is correct. So we've got a spell checker, we've got a grammar checker, we've got the ability to write genomes, write DNA, edit DNA. And so this is kind of starting to be the emergence of, I think, what will be this unlock of this opportunity set.
You guys get all that? Taking notes. So we talk about with AI a lot about how it's augmenting jobs or potentially replacing jobs. How do you think about AI with the advancements in genetics impacting seed breeders, and how should seed breeders be thinking about their relationship?
I mean, I'll be honest, a lot of times when we at Ohalo talk about partnership with companies that have breeders, we have a really hard time getting anywhere. So, it's going to be like any industry where a disruptive new technology comes into play. And what I mean is advanced gene editing or advanced breeding tools. You're either going to adopt them and create leverage from them, or you're going to think this is a replacement and it can't be as good as me, and you're not going to adopt it. But if the technology works and you're in the latter camp, your organization is going to be deeply challenged, because these tools are going to come to market and they are going to be transformative for that market. So your organization's either going to be there or not. And typically when we see on a biz dev cycle the meeting with a company that has breeders, and we end up being, what happens is executives say, let the breeders decide. And then the breeders are like, no, thank you. There's something deeply psychological about the disruption that arises with new technology. And it does a lot of what you've maybe done historically, and it maybe does it in an automated or better way. It becomes really hard to say, great, I want to go after it. The companies that do, however, accelerate and they win, and that's the evolution of businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think about taxi drivers and Uber, right? The taxi drivers that maybe were resistant to change versus someone that saw the opportunity and saw that change happening.
Totally. I mean, you have your medallion. I've done 30 years of field evaluations as a breeder. That's it's hard to say, hey, the software is going to do. And we saw this, by the way, Climate Corp, a long time ago, 2008, we were taking software out to farmers in the field because, in the Midwest, farmers got mobile phones around 2008. And that was their first time getting on the internet because they didn't have desktop computers. I'm speaking generally here. But I do remember a lot of meetings in the field where farmers almost got viscerally upset at the fact that like there was this concept of digital agronomy and that software might make a recommendation when the farmer says, I've farmed this land for 30 years myself. I know this land better than anyone. There's no way my phone is going to tell me what to do better than I know. And by the way, that's like the innovator's dilemma in every business, especially with the digital age, with AI, whatever you want to call it, with any new technology. There's an evolution that occurs where you either are going to say, I have to figure out how to get leverage from this technology, or I'm going to say there's no way that this technology can do what I do, and I'm not going to embrace it. And that's just the nature of how these things evolve.
All right, let's talk about the farmers and the impact at the actual farm level. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you are solving that at Ohalo with boosted breeding and the ultimate impact down to the farmer.
Well, I mean, at Ohalo, this boosted breeding system allows us to transfer the entire genome of the mother plant and the father plant into the offspring seed. So rather than get a random half of the genes from the mother and a random half of the genes from the father, which is a process called meiosis controls that. And meiosis creates a randomization of the genome from the mother and the father to create sperm and egg. And therefore, when a sperm and egg come together, you get all these siblings that are different, even though they come from the same two parents. And every seed is technically genetically distinct, just like siblings are different. In our case, we turn off meiosis, and every sex cell, the sperm and the egg, are clones of the parent, the whole genome of the mother, whole genome of the father. So when you combine them, you get seed that is identical, and it has all the genes, all the traits of the mother, all the traits of the father stacked together. So the unlock, one particular unlock of this technology is in vegetatively propagated crops, like potato, where we spend quite a bit of time. So potato farmers today they make about $5,000 an acre, might spend about $1,000 an acre planting leftover potatoes. That's how we plant potatoes. Chop up the potatoes, store them, put fungicide on them, put them in, this equipment, a lot of diesel, a lot of labor. You're moving 4 tons of plant material per acre into the ground to grow 40 tons of potato. And you're fumigating the land. So you might spend upwards of $2,000 an acre on your $5,000 of revenue just to deal with this planting process and all the risks of having all this biomaterial sitting around. So by moving to true seed, because our system allows us to make genetically uniform seed in potato, you can put a seed in the ground and replace that whole system. So that farmer will now hopefully see higher yield because we're making better varieties, which are, revenue goes up to $6,000 an acre, and costs go down from $2,000 to maybe $500 for the seed. So, I think very much about ultimately none of these technologies, whether it's what we're doing or what other companies are doing, being worth anything if the signal significantly outpaces the noise and the performance improvement associated with that technology. So we have a pretty clear line of sight when we take vegetative crops like potato, and we just announced our strawberry consortium yesterday, and moving those markets to true seed markets where you seed instead of vegetative propagation. And the farmer reduces costs, increases yield. It's a pretty straightforward kind of value prop and value capture opportunity.
Yeah, and I think you shared on our podcast before of the idea of giving the farmer a certain percentage of that value creation. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, this is Monsanto's model. I think it's a pretty good model for generally business, which is if you can deliver value for your customer and you can charge them roughly 1/3 of the incremental profit that the customer is realizing, they're usually going to say yes. That's usually a good kind of balance point. So for every $3 of profit, you get 2 and I get 1. Seems like a good deal of incremental profit. So if you're bringing new hybrid variety, new seed to market, the incremental yield associated with that seed is the price you would charge. You charge roughly 1/3 of that in terms of incremental profit that's realized. So, I think that's a great thing about the seed business. It's a great thing about enterprise software. It's the exact same business model. Enterprise software isn't sold on a COGS basis. It's got 90% margin because you're identifying the reduction in spend by the enterprise user, and you're saying, I'm going to roughly charge you some percentage of that savings, and that's totally worth it to me as an enterprise software subscriber because I'm getting a massive payback I'm getting a multiple on that invested capital. So that's true for ag tech. I don't think it's necessarily novel, but I think the challenge in agriculture is sometimes it takes many years. I mean, this conversation I'm having with you right now has probably been said 1,000 times on the stage, but it takes many years to get the results. So how much signal is there? How much noise is there? And if I don't see the results very quickly, it's going to be hard to kind of, have a good kind of revenue opportunity there.
Okay, as we kind of wrap up, I want to just zoom out a little bit and look at, the ag tech investment space, and talk about what do you see in companies that will win? Do you think now is a harder time, an easier time? What's your perspective on this space?
A lot of people use the term that there's kind of a cyclical kind of condition in the market, that things were good and now they're bad and they're going to get good. When are they going to get good again? I don't know if that's true. I would argue that it's probably the case that we were in a bubble for a long period of time. We probably had a decade-long bubble. The ag tech bubble may have been a function of interest rates, may have been a function of one or two acquisitions that kind of drove,
nudge.
Yeah, I mean, drove interest that there's going to be repeated acquisitions. I mean, that kind of stuff. But the problem with agriculture as a kind of market for venture capital perspective is you have a sales cycle and a valuation cycle once a year. And so if you deploy capital really fast into developing new software for traditional enterprises, you can go sell to that enterprise customer every day, every week, every month. They'll see the results, they'll subscribe, and you can build a business and iterate on your product every day, every week, every month. With agriculture, you plow a bunch of capital in, you still have to wait for the sales window, then you have to wait a year for the results, and then you make a decision on how do I iterate to improve that product, and the customer makes a decision on whether I'm going to increase spend or decrease spend. And that's what makes it hard to deploy a lot of capital really fast into agriculture to drive innovation, to drive technological innovation. And so I would say that we're probably, rather than being at a cyclical trough, maybe we're normalizing, and maybe we haven't even fully normalized yet, in the sense that deploying capital, from investing in new technology, has an ROIC equation that means that there's a limit to the amount of capital that can actually go in and hit the ROIC targets for all the capital that's going in. Now, that's a very general statement that probably means LPs are fucked and there's going to be a reduction in investment, and there has been, and so on. But the truth is, it doesn't matter what cycle you're in, what the macroeconomic conditions are, what the business cycle is. If you build truly transformative technology, you always have an opportunity to make a massive business in any market, in any climate. This is a truth of the power laws of venture returns. You're either a venture capital fund that has one of these power law companies in it, or you're not. If you're not, you're worth nothing. The top quartile of venture funds returned 2.4x over the last 10 years. You could have bought the NASDAQ and made 8x over that same period of time. And that's the top quartile of venture funds. So there's maybe 2 or 3 funds that have had 2 funds in a row of significant outperformance in top decile. And we all know who they are. And that's because they got access to the power law. There's one Meta, there's one Amazon, there's one Google, there's one Facebook, or there's one Uber, there's one Tesla. So you're either in a power law company or you're not. So at any given moment, any company in this room and any investor has the opportunity to find a power law type business and build a power law type business. So that doesn't matter that venture dollars are down. It doesn't matter that farmers are spending slightly less. It doesn't matter that commodity prices are cyclically down. At the end of the day, if you can transform the customer's business, if you can create a transformative technology, you can build a 1000x return in any market at any time. So I don't know if it matters that there's this kind of cycle. What it does matter to is the LPs who are basically buying the index. And I think that's probably the key takeaway.
Love it. I'm ready to run through a wall. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks, David.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed that fireside chat with David. That was a lot of fun to do. We'd love to see you guys coming up in March in San Francisco, World Agri-Tech. Get your discounted ticket using code ACRE10 at checkout, and we'd love to see you guys there. And sneak peek, next week, Tim and I have a really big announcement regarding Polaris Energy Services, so we're excited to share that with the world. So be on the lookout for some news on LinkedIn, and we'll be talking about it on the podcast next week. So we appreciate you guys listening.